agencies that do public aid, because we have the rising crisis, ongoing crisis with the pandemic. We have, the high rates now of children in hospitalization. I think Georgia is actually now fourth in terms of hospitalization numbers of children. This nonsense around back to school, but we also have the earthquake in Haiti, which I'm sure you all have talked about, as well as the situation in Afghanistan. And it's just a lot. It's a lot happening. And I'm sure you all have been talking about Afghanistan, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I was just curious, Brother Carl, with the situation that is happening right now and just as quickly, it's okay, the U.S. is on their way out. The Afghanistan government basically collapses on itself, and here comes the Taliban. It just happens so quickly. I just was curious, some of your thoughts on just how, all of this fell apart.
Well, it shouldn't be surprising that it happened so quickly. Again, if the Afghan military, for which we, have been training and spent so much money training, if they give up, the president leaves, the Taliban is sitting right there. But the thing that, Georgia and I just finished talking about it in her closing statement, she says that Biden has put the estimate somewhere around 80,000 Afghan allies who supported us. And when they say supported us, I'm saying those individuals and their families. So to me, the exit should have been that you leave the U.S. military intact and you get out of, you help our allies, because again, they were vital to giving us information. You leave them at play. So when Biden says my first responsibility is Americans, Joe, look, all you had to do, I'm sorry, Mr. President, all you had to do, and far be it from me, I didn't go to military college like so many of your advisors did. But clearly, all you had to do was leave. Common sense would say to me, we are the behemoth over there. The Taliban had gone into hiding. So as long as American troops are there, the Taliban wasn't going to come out. They weren't going to have check spots all over the place in which you couldn't get people to the airport. If part of your exit strategy was to ensure that you took care, and if it was 80,000, so be it. If it would have been 180,000, you weren't complaining when those 80,000 and their families were putting their lives at risk to give you vital information, to be your interpreters. There was no complaint at that point. So there should be no complaint in living up to an oath to take care of those individuals who took care of us, thus the term allies. Because trust and believe, if Europe gets in a situation and we're supposed to be allies, we will not hesitate to go and support Europe. There should have been no hesitation about supporting those allies. So all we needed to do was just leave our troops there. The Taliban wasn't going to come out and deal with them. But the moment that the Taliban saw the embassy evacuate, they saw American soldiers left. Well, if I'm a rat sitting there looking at a big mountain of cheese and the cats know where to protect, I'm going out too immediately. I'm not going to wait for the cheese to spoil. I'm going out there quick and in a hurry. So to me, don't try to dramatize the situation like 80,000 is too much. 80,000 wasn't too much when we needed their help, Mr. President, to all of those in place. Now, I can see, Anoa, I can see a situation where we have to go back to Afghanistan. Because what we have to remember is that just as soon as we evacuated and the Taliban took over, guess who stepped into play? China. And there is no doubt that the Chinese are leading in the technology. They're leading in all this. And now, why would China have an interest in Afghanistan? Because Afghanistan has one of the most needed and sought after minerals in today's technology, and that's lithium, loaded with lithium. So just like the Chinese have been doing all over the world, the Chinese have gone in there and tried to buy up the entire continent of Africa because of the natural resources there to aid in their technology. And you got to remember, there is not one piece of technology that does not have lithium. And the Chinese have already said, yeah, they may have the worst air pollution today, but they are quickly moving away from fossil fuels, away from cars that use fossil fuels, and they're using, they're moving towards electric vehicles. So China is the largest consumer in the world. They are the largest electric vehicle market in the world. And if they're going to do that, they need lithium. So now just imagine that China, and you don't have to imagine, because China is going to go in there and they're going to pay a healthy sum to mine for that lithium. Now, the one thing that the Taliban did not have was an absolutely deep, deep set of pockets. Now China's about to deepen those pockets. So what happens when now they get the financial resources to carry out their terrorist attack around the world? And let there be another terrorist attack on this soil, or on American soil. And you know that they were able to do that because of the money that they got from China. So what is America going to do? America's going to go over there and tell China, hey, you're funding the Taliban, stop it. China's going to be like, we ain't got nothing to do with that. We simply bought minerals. So now imagine the conflict that takes place there. So if another attack occurs on this soil and we are able to ascertain that the Taliban was able to do that because now they got deep pockets from the sale of their natural resources to a country like China, oh God, talk about another world war. Oh, it's going to be absolutely major. And the thing that we have to understand about China, please understand this. The greatest nation in the world is the nation that has the greatest military in the world. And the greatest military in the world is the one that has the greatest technology in the world. Because see, if I come to fight you and we're in a rock fight and I got bigger rocks than you, I'm going to win. But the day that you just sitting there throwing rocks and I'm now shooting arrows at you, my arrows are a greater technology. And if all I do is shoot arrows and you find a way to shoot bullets, and then you sitting there shooting bullets and I learn to drop bombs. So technology is going to determine who has the greatest military. And trust and believe, where America once flexed as having the greatest military in the world because we had the greatest technology in the world, those days are gone. The Chinese has equally as good of technology. But here is the most damning side of that, Sister Noah, is that in this country, when you add up all of the undergrads in my field of discipline, in engineering, China is, if we're producing 80,000 or 90,000 undergrad engineers a year, China's producing twice that of PhDs in engineering. So not only do they have a plethora of people, phenomenal technology, but they got the brains and the smarts to continue advancing their technology. So, can I see a situation where we as a country have to go back to Afghanistan? Absolutely, because as soon as we left out of there, China quickly marched in there with contracts. Now, they had contracts with the old Afghan leadership, but now that that leadership is gone, trust and believe, what they were paying them was pittance. And so they'll come right back and they'll set up contracts with the Taliban to go in there and mine for those minerals that are going to lead to some of the most innovative technology in the world. I can see an absolutely incredible situation occurring right now with our departure out of there. Not to say that we shouldn't have left out of there, but trust and believe, there's a Pandora's box that is quickly about to be opened.
I mean, the Pandora's box was open when we rushed in there 3 days with no plan 20 years ago. But I definitely appreciate the perspective that you're adding in. What I would just say is this is always the dichotomy that we tend to fall into as the United States in terms of where do we stand guard or watch, so to speak, as a mechanism of preventing another power of also intervening. I mean, we've done this in multiple places. When it was Russia, we were concerned about, right? And now that role has kind of shifted to China, and it makes for an interesting paradigm that should be discussed in further at a later date. We all can get on. So I do appreciate you adding some additional thoughts to your other thoughts from earlier. I wanted to take a real hard turn and bring it back domestically and just talk about, we were talking about DeSantis and just the slew of Southern governors that have been really screwing up on the pandemic. Last week, it was announced that Governor DeSantis was going to introduce this new, he made a big deal about it, right? He's not telling people to mask up. He's actually getting upset with school districts that are trying to mandate masks. We've now seen Miami-Dade County, I believe, Orange County around Orlando, Broward County. There are several counties that now have mask mandates for schools, and schools are back in session. But But he made this big deal about the mononucleal, and I might be not mispronouncing it, forgive me, y'all, the therapy that is used, for earlier on treatment of folks with early COVID symptoms, not people who have really severe symptoms who need to go to the hospital. Except yesterday, someone who was in line at the site that was rapidly rushed open in Jacksonville, Florida, someone who was standing in line took a picture of what seemed like a woman with a drape over her just laying on the floor. And according to the article from local reporters down there in Jacksonville, the man said that the picture did not even tell the whole story. What it was that this woman was moaning and in pain. And there were multiple people, he said, that were moaning, they were in pain. He was waiting 2.5 hours to get this therapy. So what happened was the governor rushes in and is like, yes, we're going to set up this site. We're going to do all this great stuff. Not really. And we're gonna introduce this treatment that you need to have administered by a doctor. It's an infusion. It's supposed to cut the symptoms of the COVID-19 virus like significantly, but it's only available to people who have only had mild symptoms, moderate symptoms, and in the first several days post testing, getting notice of a positive test. This is in fact what Donald Trump was treated with before. So it's really fascinating, right? You have these people who, many of whom are against vaccinations because they're not FDA authorized. They only have the emergency, but yet they're opting for this treatment, which should be covered by insurance, but not everyone has insurance. It's also not really clear how the state of Florida is making this available to other people who are uninsured, if they are, right? So it creates all these other issues when, in fact, like Representative Angie Nixon from the region said last week and reiterated again yesterday, the governor could be enforcing a mask mandate as hospitalizations and deaths are on the rise. Cases are on the rise in Florida, as they are in many parts of the country. He could also be putting more information, more resources into moving through folks to vaccination. Isn't doing that either. But he has been pushing this new drug therapy for treatment of. So, we're not necessarily doing anything to stop the number of cases, but here we're going to act like we're doing something to treat cases. And it looks like initially it's been a rushed kind of failure at this little pilot site at the Jacksonville Public Library. And literally what Jacksonville officials said was the people were laying on the ground, literally laying on the ground because there were not enough wheelchairs because the wheelchairs had other people already in them. Why does that make sense to anyone? Like, why is that what you're saying as a rationalization? Like, I don't understand it. And so it's only been a week since this was announced. It was announced last Thursday, and it has been a colossal mess so far. And one thing that Rep. Nixon was saying, I wrote an article for News One last week about this. She noted that she had actually been trying to get the governor's team to create more testing sites in Duval County, where Jacksonville sits, because it's very hard for people to get testing. And anecdotally, I've heard this from a lot of people all over the place. It is not as easy to get testing for COVID. You can go buy the $25 a box rapid testing, but not everybody has $25. And if you're someone who works actively out in the public, that's a lot of money you would have to shell out if you're buying boxes every time. You might potentially be exposed. Another interesting COVID thing that came up is apparently there's something going on up in Michigan with an insurer that is trying to end coverage for the vaccine. Now, if your insurer is not covering the vaccine, which it's kind of wild that's happening right now, the government is still supposed to be assuring that everyone gets access to the vaccine for free. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. But like this hodgepodge of states just doing things and mandating is really challenging compared to what is happening overall. So just keep an eye on Florida, and definitely, check out Representative Angie Nixon on Twitter or Facebook. She is one of a cadre of young, newly elected Black elected officials that aren't taking no stuff across the board. And then lastly, to the point of why I was in Mississippi, Mississippi, as folks may know, there is a 15-week abortion ban case that will be heard by the Supreme Court sometime. Folks are thinking to make it to the docket by December because it's not on October or November dockets, with a decision sometime, early in the spring next year. So 15-week abortion ban. There's a whole conversation happening around the pre-viability bans and the unconstitutional nature of such bans. And, you know, the lawyers for the state of Mississippi and other forces are making it very clear they're coming for Roe. And what does that really actually mean? So I was in Mississippi interviewing the clinic director of the Jackson Women's Health Center, which is the last remaining abortion clinic in the state. And then also I swung through Alabama on my way back to Georgia and talked with folks at the West Alabama Women's Center. Alabama has 3 remaining clinics, and kind of 3, possibly 2, just because it's just so much that I learned in this conversation, and having been a kind of advocate for a little bit of a while, you know, especially since I had put Alyssa Milano on her place in 2019 with her stupid sex strike Georgia ban thing. But listening to the mostly Black and other women of color who lead these spaces, and really understanding the full context, that this is not simply a conversation about abortion access, right? There's so many other considerations that really, when you look through a reproductive justice framework that looks at the totality of people's, you know, health, well-being, bodily autonomy, it's fascinating that we're talking about these places where, you know, Florida actually has pretty permissive abortion laws. But when we're talking about like Mississippi and Alabama, Louisiana, other places where people are resistant to masking and vaccinations because bodily autonomy, are willing to deny other people that same right to bodily autonomy, right, to make decisions for themselves. The other issue that really came up was more about safety. Like, there might be things that are accessible, but is it actually safe? Who is making sure that some of these doctors are doing what they're supposed to be doing in the course of their care? And are people being actually provided care beyond the initial procedure? Because it is a medical procedure that requires follow-up care. The other interesting thing that happened while I was traveling was the Texas case. The Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals upheld a Texas case that outlawed a procedure that's used, D&E, that's used pretty widely in second trimester. And it is really interesting because it is basically a pre-viability ban, this banning of a commonly held procedure that's done everywhere. It's also an indication for many who made the case, you know, in 2016 that voting for Clinton was a necessity for maintaining the courts. When you look at the damage that is being done by Trump judges, I mean, this is a panel of, I think the majority of the panel was Trump judges. When you read the decision, you can obviously know they know nothing of law, or they don't care anything about facts. I mean, you see things riddled with misinformation, very inflammatory language. And it's really an interesting place we're in now. Whether or not, you know, however you voted in 2016 is how you voted, I don't believe in relitigating things. I stand by my position because Georgia was not on the verge of flipping in 2016 as the way it was in 2020. It was a very different ballgame. But we grow, we learn, and this is the landscape we have now. And so as we are wrapping up, I think Ben is going to come on audio, which is like some real peak privileged male stuff. Like, you wake me up to cover for you, and you want to come on and do your show via audio. So like, I gotta go get cute and be on camera, but then you want to come in? Okay. But it's a show, so we'll let Benjamin come on and holla.
He's not here yet, so yeah.
Ben will join us sometime this morning.
so Sister Noah, you know, on the situation with DeSantis, here's my question. How many children have been infected with the Delta variant in Florida? Do we have any idea?
I have not looked at the actual statistics, but I probably can pull them up real quickly while we're looking. I know last week overall we had over 100,000 cases with kids, like nationwide. Right. I'm not sure exactly how many we have specifically in Florida as of probably earlier this week, but keep talking and I'll pull it up.
And so from the jump, DeSantis has absolutely cloned himself as the little -45. And again, I have no doubt that he has his eyes on the White House if Trump doesn't run again. I have no doubt about it. So now he's come, you know, now all of a sudden, he's a virologist. So, what has the CDC said about this new drug that he's now pushing? I don't know what the answer to that is, but, Negative 45 once said we should use bleach, right?
So that is something that does actually have the emergency authorization the same way.
Okay.
So it is something that has emergency authorization the same. It's in a similar category as the vaccines, and it is recognized as a treatment for, like I was saying, those early, days of COVID exposure when someone has been tested and has been identified as having COVID.
So the CDC has approved it for emergency use.
The FDA. The FDA. Emergency authorization comes from the FDA. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so from the FDA
for this. Yep.
So when you're looking at DeSantis, trust and believe that his anti-vaccination rhetoric, his no mask mandate rhetoric, heaven forbid that children start dying at any number in the state of Florida because they were not protected, even with masks. That is on his hands. That is absolutely on his hands.
So your point, so as of the end of last week, they recorded 31,752 new COVID cases in Floridians under the age of 19 and younger. And 2 deaths of Floridians under the age of 16, so school-age children. But to your point about the masking, University of Alabama actually just released a report in the past couple of days that showed the efficacy of masking. And one of the things they looked at was schools in North Carolina, and the difference masking made more so than social distancing. So they said that masking had a bigger impact from their analysis than whether or not schools had kids. Because remember, some schools last year had kids only 3 feet apart instead of the 6 feet. They said the 3 to 6 feet did not matter as much when children were all masked. So when everyone's properly masked, it reduced rates of transmission. Now, what that holds for Delta, which has a different transmission rate than, the Alpha version from last year, is unclear, but it is clear that at least that masking does make a difference, and it's definitely something that we should be doing.
But here's where I want your thoughts on. So clearly, those in the Republican Party, or though you have this group of people who say the government should not mandate, they shouldn't be able to tell me what I can put in my body. If that's, I don't want to be too simple with it. So if that's their position, then it's very difficult for me to understand, and maybe you can help me to understand how, on one hand, you can say that the government shouldn't be able to tell you what to do with your body, but then now you want to come and attack Roe v. Wade and tell a woman what she can and cannot do with her body. So help me to understand the
It's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, but you also, so not only are we going to tell women what to do with their bodies and people who give birth what to do with their bodies, but we're also going to deny, one of the things that was raised was when you look at Mississippi and the way in which Mississippi has been constantly attacking Roe, probably almost since it became the law of the land. But I was talking with my stepfather, and I was seeing so many parallels between the attacks on Roe v. Wade and voting rights and the civil rights that we acquired during the civil rights movement, right? And you see these states that are very focused on, freedom, bodily autonomy, whatever, only as it applies to them, to their select grouping of people, and have been actively working to restrict the rights and access across multiple spaces for multiple groups of people who exist. So it's it's the legal othering, right, of folks that have been previously subjugated under, Jim Crow or other systems of just sanctioned, oppression. And so when we're talking about what's happening now, even if we uphold and folks have been saying this for a long time, particularly folks here in the South, Roe v. Wade has never had the same meaning in the South as it has in, places like New York or Chicago, places that have stronger, more robust presence, right? It's not even so much just that some places blue, because we have seen Southern Democrats in earlier iterations also actively, and not even necessarily the ones who became Dixiecrats or switched Republican, just Democrats generally in the South have not necessarily had the strongest stance. That's, I think, the thing about the Louisiana governor, right? Joe Biden's is kind of a pro-choice, pro-life flip-flop type of. That's why some of these Democrats kind of like, well, I'm still more pro-life or whatever the case may be. And it's just like being pro-life doesn't mean being pro-choice doesn't mean that you can't be pro-life. It just means that you
Correct.
respect other people's rights to choose.
Now, have you posed, or do you know if that question has been posed to members of the Republican Party who are taking this position that the government can't mandate what I do to my body, but yet I want to mandate what a woman can do to her body, or and not just a woman, but obviously you can
Yes.
have that choice being made by a woman with her spouse or her significant other as to what they want to do in that situation. So do you know if that question has been posed to that side and what their response has been?
I'm not sure if that specific phrasing has been posed, but what I do know is how they sidestep the women's right to choose is arguing when they do the arguments around personhood of the fetus, right? And the rights of a fetus. And that's where that whole conversation comes in.
I think the parallel is I got the right to choose what I inject in my body, what I do to my body. That's the common theme.
Oh,
here.
I agree with you. I agree with you what you're saying logically, but we're not talking to logical-minded people. And I think that we need to put a pin in this right here and switch to like it is. Because we have the amazing Rebecca. Wait, not Rebecca either. Come on now. What are y'all doing on Friday? But I hear there's someone super amazing filling in for Rebecca as well. And I cannot wait to meet them when we come back with Like It Is.
Like it or not.
No, we're staying as BPD show. We're just staying as BPD show. Excuse me. See, look, there's a lot of fast moving things. See, they got your girl out here like saying crazy stuff.
I know if you only knew.
Off guard, but we're gonna stick with BPD show.
I'm here,
so
David.
We got Ben too.
We got Ben who decided to pop in this morning when he's like, I don't know why I'm here if Ben's here, but hey.
But Noah, understand this, Noah. Regardless of how you're rolling like that, you are cute, okay? Like it or not.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Like it or not. Brother Pascal, very nice to meet you this morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning to the panel. Honored to be back. Happy Friday, everybody. Oh, and by the way,
Friday.
You're kicking ass, girl. So you're doing great.
Absolutely.
And it's Anoa, right? Anoa. Sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. No with an A in front.
I just read it in the thing. So you know.
No. You're totally fine. I appreciate it. Like full panel. Good morning. And Benjamin. Hi.
Good morning, Anoa. Good morning, everybody. You're there for a reason, Anoa. Thank you so much for being there and doing what you're doing. I just have to register my dissent with my good brother.
Are we backtracking to the Afghanistan conversation?
We don't have to, because I totally do need to get out of the way and go and take care of myself. But I just couldn't let the episode go without Brother Mac know. Let Brother Mac, I might have to come for you on Monday with the dissent on your position on Afghanistan. I just got to register it in the universe.
Fam, come with it. Come with it. That's fine. I love a healthy debate.
All right. In that case, Noah, please forgive me for exercising my height of male privilege, as you adequately put it, and May I digress and get out of y'all way, because my wife's going to snatch me off the phone if I don't go and lay down somewhere. All right, y'all.
I mean, shout out to Jada.
Props
running
to
things
Jada.
on the back room all the time.
I'm out of here, y'all.
Bye. Good morning, y'all. So much going on. I mean, I don't know, Pascal, like what has been on your radar this week? I know I'm coming in at the end of the week and y'all have already been doing the thing, but what are kind of some of the things that y'all been covering? What's been on your radar? What are you thinking about this Friday morning?
Wow. A lot of different things. The fake bombing threat that happened yesterday, that's definitely on my mind. Obviously in the forefront of my mind as well is the people of Haiti. There was that earthquake and the death toll keeps going up and up. So, and my family is from Haiti. So we have been very, very focused right now on just trying to make sure that people are safe. But I've been saying that over and over and over again every single day on this show and on mine as well. So R. Kelly is also something that's going on. R. Kelly, what's up with that? I that's what I want to know. What's going on with the situation over there? Yeah.
So Pascal is aware that we have a surprise guest coming shortly, but unfortunately, it will not line up with Pascal. So we can discuss before.
We can go ahead and discuss. No, she had a delay.
My bad.
In her schedule. No.
You're fine. You're good.
You're totally fine. No, see, we just rocking and rolling and keeping it moving. But I mean, R. Kelly, this is like decades in the making. It's also really interesting because I think Aaliyah's digital content drops as well this week.
Yes.
So that's kind of wild. But this is decades in the making. I mean, the stuff with R. Kelly and, coming of age in Chicago at a high school that he once attended. It was really interesting, right? Because there was always the murmurings. There was always the commentary. There was always like, oh, he's here at lunch period again. So literally this dude would come around during lunch. So this is in the mid 90s. So this is before everyone knew him for I Believe I Can Fly. I saw an article that was like, well known for I Believe I Can Fly. I was like, no, he's well known for Bump and Grind and a bunch of other things. I Believe I Can Fly is the thing that they used to make little kids sing at their graduations. Like the wildness of making little kids sing I Believe I Can Fly. But it was a catchy song. But anyway, yeah. And now R. Kelly's trial is underway. And this is his Brooklyn trial that's happening right now, because I'm actually losing track because
this is the New York trial.
This is the New York trial because he has multiple cases against him, actually.
So actually, as I was putting through this B-roll, just to connect the dots for you, Noah, apparently they specifically wound up in the New York federal court because one of the laws they're manipulating or trying to utilize to get a felony possibly for him, it would have to be prosecuted in New York.
In New York. Because, Illinois prosecutors, they tried with the sex tape that was, the talk of the town about 15 years ago or so, maybe. I cannot believe we've been having these conversations for this long. I don't know your thoughts on all of this as it unfolds.
Look, I'm an OG, so, I ain't really been keeping up with it. But look, before we get into that, Pascal, I got to tell you this, man. First of all, my heart goes out to you and your family and all of those in Hades, number one. Number two, I tuned into your show yesterday, man, and I'm absolutely rolling, brother. So just absolutely great show. Absolutely enjoyed it. So
thank you,
man. Wow. With that said, I'm gonna sit and cut and just learn more about what's going on with R.
Kelly. Yeah, it's to me, it seems like it's going to be starting to look like a little bit of a circus on the outside, outside on the outside of the court as well.
Yeah.
It just looks it looks really insane to me. I just saw somebody say something about people who are dancing to his music outside of the court, saying something about
Boondocks episode.
Yeah, it's like a Boondocks episode for sure.
It's literally the Boondocks episode.
Yeah. It's crazy to think. It's crazy to think that we have a serial predator that has been caught red-handed. There have been documentaries, surviving R. Kelly out here, and there are still people who believe not that they can fly, but that he's not the one, like that he didn't do anything, that he's innocent. Look at look at the face that he's doing in his mug shots and stuff. It's like, I'm innocent. And it's crazy. Then you have the Gayle King interview as well.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
Unhinged.
If that's not saying I did it, then I don't know what else is. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's a guilty man just trying to find any way out of getting out of prison. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So personally, I know that there's a lot of people, like we just talked about a second ago, people are dancing outside of the courthouse thinking that, they're just trying to take a black man down. I'm sorry. This has nothing to do with his race. He did something very, very bad. He groomed and he abused multiple women. R.I.P. Aaliyah as well. And he got away with it for so long, for decades.
Very long time.
So
finally,
Pascal, Noah,
what he deserves.
Help me with this. No,
Sure.
I don't know all the details. Of course, we all heard about Aaliyah, but I'm trying to, as I'm listening to you all, I can't see the difference between Ara and Epstein. Or is there a difference?
So I think, I don't know, like, I don't know that they're necessarily, I think there are similarities in terms of people in positions of power who
They sound identical.
who are openly engaging in destructive behavior involving, underage girls, younger women, and also are enabled in many ways by other friends in power. I mean, like this stuff around R. Kelly has existed for a long time, and he's continued to tour, make albums. Yeah, and so I think that is something similar in terms of Epstein.
No, it was absolutely similar.
Yeah.
I mean, Epstein, and they weren't young ladies; they were girls. I mean, he's not in here because he was dealing with young women, 21-year-old and above. He's dealing with children, right? And that's what Epstein was dealing with. And Epstein had enablers, and it was going on for a long time, which is why Bill Gates and his wife ends up getting divorced, because, Melinda finds out that Bill was running with Epstein for whatever period of time. So when I'm listening to what went down with Ara, and I absolutely watched the documentary on Epstein, and it is absolutely identical. So, I would dare say that those same people who are dancing to Ara's music, if you put Epstein in front of them, they're going to look at Epstein and go, he was guilty. Well, I'm trying to understand the difference, because Epstein had enablers. He was doing it for a long time. He was dealing with minors. And that's what I'm hearing you tell me about what you saw in high school or whatever was going on in high school. I'm trying to understand the difference.
So
I'm trying to differentiate.
What is really interesting is that I think even more so than Epstein, I think this is more egregious because this happened. It was very open, was very brazen, and there are various documents. I think it was a Vice article in early 2000s. There were several different documented stories, right? And there were attempts to break these stories, to shed the light. Like I said, there was the attempt to do the trial in Chicago. I think that trial lasted several years, actually, because he was on tour. So his lawyers would use different maneuvers to be able to extend the trial out. So by the time they extend the trial, this is for the sex tape with him allegedly peeing on a young girl. By the time they extended that out, the girl in question was then an adult, right? And so I believe it was the singer Sparkle's niece, allegedly or reportedly. And so, like, there are all these different ways that he and his whole, like, empire, so to speak, manipulated the legal process, manipulated the media. And quite honestly, let's just be real. People don't care about young Black girls. Like, people don't care about young Black girls. I mean, we even within our own space, we have some of these people out there dancing and singing are also our moms and aunties who just think that, oh, she's fast. Oh, they were out there, doing whatever they were doing. And there is, when I think back, we've had several debates about this, like, amongst folks from our high school. And, like, when I think back, folks are like, how many grown men did we have at prom? Like, so I think in some of our communities, like, this has actually been considered a norm. Like, it's not abnormal to have a 15, 16-year-old girl who has an adult boyfriend. It should be abnormal. It should not be a norm. It should not be tolerated. And yet, and so for whatever reason, because people have allowed, young girls, teenage girls, to just be left out there to be preyed upon without protecting them, without having them some safeguards and stuff. Like, actually, when I thought about it, I was thinking about my best friend. She got stood up by her prom date. It was a long argument that night after we left prom, but, like, he was somewhere in his 20s and we were 17, 18 years old. So yeah, like, it is. And I know that's not just a Chicago thing, right? Like, it is a problem across multiple communities. But I remember the first time a grown man looked at my daughter. She was 13 and she wasn't like she was, and it doesn't even matter how a girl's dressed, but it wasn't like my daughter was dressed provocatively or anything either. She's literally, I look at her, she's my 13-year-old daughter. She's now 20. But I literally was ready to get out this car with, I think they might have been a wrench in my car. I was literally about to beat this man like life. And she turned around and said something like mommy to me or whatever. And then he like got straight real quick. But that's the other thing, because of the way Black girls, quote unquote, look older or develop or whatever, people have all these excuses for making it okay to exploit our girls. And I mean, it's unfortunate.
Let me say this, Anoa. When you say the R, it's interesting that I didn't have anything to say, and all of a sudden this Epstein thing comes to mind, and it's all sorts of things coming to mind. But when you say, but the R. Kelly situation was more open, you got to understand the resources that Epstein had at his disposal. I mean, we're talking about the mighty. You're talking about royalty in England that was dealing with him. You're talking about a former U.S. President, Clinton, that was alleged to have been with him. You're talking about Bill Gates. You're talking about real big money. And these cases with Epstein date back to 2002 when he was dealing with 14-year-olds. So it was well known. It's just that you had some of the powerful dealing with it. That's why the young woman who was his main enabler, they're waiting on her to start dropping names. And I'm waiting on that situation of when she starts dropping names. So again, when you look at the Epstein case, there has not been one thing that you, Brother Pascal, has said that does not absolutely mirror what Epstein did. It doesn't, and there was no doubt that this dude was absolutely guilty of these situations. So they're like, they are as close to twin, as identical.
Yeah, the only difference, Brother Mac, the only difference between Epstein and R. Kelly is that Epstein got away with it. Why? Because he ain't here no more. He can't speak on this stuff anymore. Yeah, he has his enabler, but let's see if she's a ride or die, right? Because she was ride or die for a long time. Is she willing to come up and say something? We'll see. R. Kelly, Ara Kelly is up in court right now he's facing the music. Pun intended, not intended.
But Pascal, understand. I don't know if I would say Epstein got away with it, because again, they had Epstein locked up when he died, killed himself, whatever the situation is. I mean, and of course, there's a lot of talk behind that maybe somebody killed him, because if he starts dropping names out of his book of who associated with him, I mean, there's talk that Clinton was on his plane, that they got an IT expert that was talking about on his island. As he was walking around, he saw.
I don't think anything's going to take Bill Clinton down, unfortunately. I think the difference is that, like you just said, you have a bunch of wealthy, predominantly almost exclusively white men, the powerful of the powerful. And then you have, someone who was pilfering in the dealings of exploiting Black girls, right? Mm-hmm. And that is just, I think that there is a forgiveness for powerful Black, Clinton has how many rape accusations against him on his own, right? I don't think, even if there is any, and people have already known that he's been on Epstein's jet into his private island before, right? I don't think anything else revealed. But when we're talking about R. Kelly, we are talking about several decades going back to the 90s of people disregarding, his behavior towards young Black girls and young Black women, including one of our most beloved R&B princesses, Aaliyah.
I think that's where the commonality comes in, is that these men who have committed these atrocities, the one thing that we got them Black, we got them white, but the one thing that all of them have is power. They all have power, money, and influence. And that's been the commonality. It's the commonality with Michael Jackson. It was a commonality with R. Kelly. It was a commonality with Epstein. It was a commonality with Cosby.
Michael Jackson is hard for some folks.
Yeah, that's a hard conversation.
Michael Jackson conversation is hard for some folks. Even with the documentary, that is hard. That one's hard for some folks.
I guarantee you, if it was my child, it wouldn't be hard. If it was your,
I don't disagree with you. Parent to parent, I do not disagree with you, but I just know, like, it is like my mom is a diehard Michael Jackson fan. but she watched the documentaries and she was like, I don't know if I can deny it anymore. This is so hard to reconcile.
He's a national treasure. That's what a lot of people say.
The reason that happens is because, we get inside what we love about these people. Either they're stars in their rights, they're politicians. We like that. We forget that they're human, and they come with some sicknesses and some ailments and some freakiness that crosses the line to being illegal. And it's hard for, in the case of Cosby, it was hard for people to separate Dr. Huxtable from Dr. Cosby. But the dude was sick. I mean, shit, he's hanging out at the Playboy Mansion. You can say what you want to, but you ain't gonna be, and on top of that, I mean, some of that stuff is so crazy. I mean, if I'm hanging out, if Hugh Hefner's my boy, and I'm hanging out the Playboy Mansion, I can do all the little freaky shit I want to do, and it'll all be above board. Everything's cool in the game. But no, you got to go drug.
You can be a freak if you want. You can be a freak in the morning, a freak in the evening, all you want to, as long as it's consensual. Brother Pascal, I know you don't really have a few minutes with you.
Everything's consensual in the Playboy Mansion. You have to.
I mean, as long as folks are saying yes, it's all good, or it's a nod and a wink, and they are okay with it. It's all good.
It's tattooed on your forehead. It's all good. You're getting around.
Pascal, I know we only have a few minutes with you before you have to jump and get ready for your own show. I just want to kick it back to you to wrap us up for this part of the conversation. And I'm so sorry that our guest wasn't able to be here at the same time as you.
That's all right.
If you want to, but I can connect you with her too if you want to holler at her. So.
I mean, yeah. I mean, to talk to her, sure. I won't holler.
Yeah.
But
I don't mean. I'm sorry. That's not.
Where did this conversation just go?
Talk to her on the
show. This whole conversation went off the rails, but I'm sorry, Brother Mac. You got me messed up. I'm just thinking about. Dr. Huxtable just going around a whole bunch of Playboy models. It's just too funny to me. I'm sorry. But when it comes to this whole R. Kelly situation, yes, I mean, all these guys, they all have that one thing in common. They have basically preyed on young children, have taken advantage of their power. A lot of these people, yes, like you guys have all said, have had enablers. They have had people in their corner. One thing that Epstein did have, and also R. Kelly has as well, is it just might be a little bit different. So just roll with me on this. Epstein, for example, had a whole bunch of 1%ers, whole bunch of money, whole bunch of people behind him. The powers that be are in his corner hanging out. R. Kelly, same thing. Lots of very successful people, men, maybe women that were pushing and helping him, enabling him to be able to keep continuing to groom. I mean, I heard stories about how, like, this is even said in the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, where he literally had other people helping him go and snag women, snag young women, young girls from like the local McDonald's that he would go to that was near his old neighborhood, or like there would be men
McDonald's next to my high school.
Him. Yes, there it is. Or when he's at concerts. You see what I'm saying? He would have his crew out in the crowds, and he would just be like, give him like a wink, like, hey, go get that girl in the such and such and whatever. I mean, all these people, instead of them saying, bruh, no, what are you doing? No, they're just like, okay, man, whatever you say, whatever you say, Kelly, I got you, man. That's it. And what's crazy is that none of these people were willing to sit there. None of these people were willing to sit there and stop him from doing these crazy unthinkable things to these young women, to the point where he feels like he's untouchable. Girls. And it just keeps on going. Young girls, but he feels like he's untouchable. So he keeps going and going and going. And now we're finally, decades later, finally he's getting the justice served to him. It's about damn time.
Yeah. No, and I would just add, like, just what you said about the power for the powerful. I mean, you think back to that when he did that Best of Both Worlds tour with Jay-Z. That was in the middle. They kept delaying the trial over the tape in part because of that tour. Like, that was going on at that time. So it's not like, there's the questionable stuff with Jay-Z and Beyonce, right? Like, they're different. I mean, someone brought up, like, even with Puffy, and I think it's Sean's mother. Is it Sean's mother? not Sean, his name's Sean, Justin's mother, I think what might have been underage when they first got together, who is now a major stylist and stuff, right? So, I mean, there are other people who had their specific individual situations, but the worst of the worst has always been R. Kelly, and just the wake of devastation he has left with his proliferation. Final words, because I know you have to jump.
Yeah, the same thing with that power. When you got power, you got the best of protection. And I think, Brother Pascal, that's what we're all sitting here saying, is that these men who have committed these atrocities against girls, not young ladies, but girls, that power means that they got the best of protection.
Facts. I also think that it's amazing what money can do. It's amazing what money can do. When you have a lot of money, you can throw it at the most successful, most brilliant lawyers, let's just say, and you could basically almost get away with murder. But now everything's catching up on him now, and it's about damn time. And I'm also going to be streaming Aaliyah's album today at some point, because now it's streaming on streaming sites now, and I'm very, very excited about that. So I'm going to do that and pray that he gets justice served soon.
Yes, she was a gift, and that'd be awesome.
Before we lose Pascal, I just want to make a call out on behalf of Ben for the audience to tune into his show as soon as we end. We'll probably end a little bit after 10 o'clock today. We have a recorded interview after our guest. But then, Pascal, you're streaming this morning, right?
Yes, I am. I'll be on for 1 hour-ish. So hop on over.
So it might cut close.
Sorry, say again?
It might cut close, but we're going to try to send everyone over to you.
Oh, yeah, no worries. But I'll be on right after, or at 9 a.m. Central Standard Time or 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's the Pascal Show, PASCAL Show, the Pascal Show. Hop on over and let's have some fun. I'll see you guys over there.
Nice talking to you. Have a good show.
Thank you for having me on. It was great meeting you, by the way.
Always chopping it up with you, brother.
Oh, always fun. Let's do this more. All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Pascal. Have a great weekend.
Awesome.
Up to us, let's fight it. wrong, and it still can't hurt me. No, it just can't hurt me. No. No, you just can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, no, no. I know it's hard to be polite, and it's easy being petty. My mama used to tell me, gotta use you when he ready. Man, it's crazy how my brother said it could have been my cell. It's either prison or a grave, that's what everybody tell me. Man, life ain't a beach, it's a female dog. I'm staying 10 toes down, though I still might fall. Oh yeah, now I done came through, knocking pictures off you walls. Cause loving people who persecute you, it's still a tough be a light up on my path and a lamp under my feet. I know my faith strong, but my flesh still kinda weak. When that victory be looking like the verge of defeat, and I feel that disrespect, help me turn my other cheek and say sticks and stones may break my bone, but your words can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, I ain't been right more than I've been wrong, and it still can't hurt me. No, it just can't hurt me. No. No, you just can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, no, no. No, you just can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No. See, it's hard to be polite. It's easy being petty. Mama used to tell me, gotta use you when he ready. Cause I ain't working on my own timing. Ain't got no diamonds on me, but I stay shining. Yeah, yeah. They say the world would be a better place if we take out the hate. Stop all the hate right now. Yeah. Let's keep it real, it'd be better if we just subtract the fake. Yeah. So be a light up on my path and a lamp under my feet. I know my faith strong, but my flesh still kinda weak. When that victory be looking like the verge of defeat, and I feel that disrespect, help me turn my other cheek and say sticks and stones may break my bone, but your words can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, I ain't been right more than I've been wrong, and it still can't hurt me. No, it just can't hurt me. No. No, you just can't hurt me. No, you just can't hurt me. No, no, no.
Hey y'all, sorry, I was just talking smack about the AJC on Twitter and almost missed the cue to come back in, but we are back. I'm super excited and sorry she couldn't make our earlier conversation, but she's here now. We are joined by the always amazing, my big sis, Kenyette Barnes.
Hello.
Kenyette, I am so happy to see you. Kenyette is a co-founder of #MuteRKelly. And so we were talking about R. Kelly and the trial and all the things. And I quickly texted Kenyette when I woke up this morning and found out I was co-host. I was like, oh my God, can you come join us for a few minutes? I know it's been busy, but sis, hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you? It's been intense, to say the least.
It has been intense. I mean, so can you talk to us a little bit about like how it is for you in this moment, and just, you know, can you just give us a brief overview of the organizing that you all did and how we got to this moment?
Well, MuteRKelly started over coffee and mutual outrage. That's really how the campaign started. As a grassroots movement, it really was from the ground up. It really started in 2017 in Atlanta, partly because we had just heard yet another scandal involving R. Kelly and underage Black girls. And it happened to be taking place in Johns Creek, in Fulton County, and he was scheduled to perform at a concert also in Fulton County. And it was just enough was enough at that point. So my co-founder and I sort of worked in two silos with this. So my co-founder has a background in artist management, so she kind of understands that kind of music industry. My background is in lobbying and activism. And together we decided that, hey, can we really have impact on this? And can we really get him done forever? And, you know, it started as a modest protest in Atlanta, an ask of local Atlanta radio stations to just stop playing the music, and also an ask of local DJs, local, wedding reception DJs, everyone just stop playing the music, stop buying the tickets. And then at that point we petitioned towards the Fulton County Board of Commissioners. And in doing that, we were able to get a unanimous vote by the entire Board of Commissioners to, send a letter to Live Nation to cancel the concert. So it really started off as just, we were tired. I mean, we're both Black women in the same generation. We remember R. Kelly scandals when they were happening in real time. And it was just enough was enough. Enough was enough. Mm-hmm. And then from there, we began to expand across the country first. I mean, when Mute R. Kelly was really happening in Atlanta, concerts around the country started to cancel. And we started to communicate with organizers in those cities to say, hey, just put pressure on them to the local stakeholders to cancel that concert. And then it started to sort of balloon to Detroit and New York and Tampa and St. Louis and, of course, Chicago. And then we also had international chapters in Germany and Netherlands. So people were just saying enough was enough.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then bringing us forward, we've seen the documentary Surviving R. Kelly, and now we're actually having trial. I saw recently a tweet from you, talking about the need to lift up the Black attorneys in some of these local communities who have been involved from day one versus, the celebrity attorneys like Gloria Allred, who have popped in with their prominence, who are in front of the cameras, while some of these, local attorneys are working with grassroots folks like yourself. Can you talk to me a little bit more about why that just was something important for you?
One of the things that happened with this campaign, and also the legal part of it, was that we were able to garner enough attention and enough impact that we caught the attention of a lot of people. We caught the attention of Time's Up, Me Too, prominent celebrities like Ava DuVernay and John Legend. And we also caught the attention of some celebrity attorneys, most notably Michael Avenatti, who is now a federal, convict, because of his own, mess. And then now most recently, Gloria Allred. And the one thing I will always say is, survivors have the right to have representation. I mean, this is a really involved process. And if you want to represent your client, that's wonderful. But my issue is the centering that occurred, most notably with Michael Avenatti. I mean, he spent months just giving salacious details of these videos and really just doing more damage than good in this regard. It's like you're giving the public intimate details of the abuse of Black girls, and you didn't even have the nuanced understanding to realize that was inappropriate. And we had to actually confront him and let him know, you got to stop this. Now we have Gloria Allred, who has managed to get in front of cameras and garner interest of the media. And I'm going to say, Gloria Allred was not on the ground with this. Gloria Allred did not even return a phone call to our attorney when he asked, as a professional courtesy, to understand what the strategy was, so that there was some continuity in strategy. And now, the attorneys that actually have been working on this, most notably, is Atlanta attorney Gerald Griggs. These voices are not being heard by the masses. You're hearing the Gloria Allred, you're hearing the Michael Avenattis, you're not hearing the Gerald Griggses of the world, the people who actually have gotten death threats from these people, who have been working on this, and sometimes pro bono, working on these cases on behalf of the families, cooperating with federal attorneys, accompanying their clients for these very sensitive, federal, prosecutor, witness gathering sessions. And it just really, breaks my heart, because when we talk about white privilege shows up in many ways. And in the activist spaces, it shows up as an entitlement and an audacity to center conversations you have no knowledge of, and to feel okay being in those places, and to marginalize the people who actually got it to the point that you even are interested. Gloria Allred has never talked about R. Kelly. She's never talked about these victims. She's never talked about how the survivors have been trying for years to get people to believe them. She never talked about the grassroots activists who've been on the ground before this happened. I'm talking about in 2009, a grassroots organization in Detroit, the Sasha Center, held their first protest of R. Kelly's concert. 5 people showed up. Where was Gloria Allred? In 2000, myself, I was in Philadelphia as a graduate student at Temple University, talking and beating the drum about R. Kelly. Where was Gloria Allred? Where was Michael Avenatti? So my issue with this is that the people who are using their celebrity privilege to come into a space and censor it, it infuriates me. And I will always speak out about it. And I will always censor the attorneys that have been on the ground, most notably Attorney Gerald Griggs.
Shout out to Attorney Gerald Griggs, one of Atlanta's.
Shout out.
But just looking forward, you know, both of us are moms of amazing, beautiful young Black folks, you know, and just really, I know some of this has been really personal. And just as we wrap up our conversation, can you just talk to me a little bit about like what your hope is for the way in which we see the treatment and respect for young Black girls and women?
I would like to have a call in to both the Black activist community and also the white feminist community, because in both of those spaces, Black girls and the intersection was completely lost. Black women and girls have historically just been mules to these movements. You know, in one regard, Black women and girls were told to choose your race over your sexual violation, because after all, you know, we're all Black people. We have to really stand together. And then on the other vein, they were told that race is irrelevant and we're just women and we have to talk about how women are sexually abused. And both of them, I think, have done irreparable damage to messaging around the intersection of Black women and girls' sexual gender-based violation. We have language now, misogynoir. Misogynoir speaks of that intersection and how that intersection actually makes these girls targets. We also have the language of adultification that comes right out of Georgetown law that talks about how Black girls primarily are viewed as more precocious, emotionally, psychologically, sexually, physically, than their counterparts, and how this adultification makes them targets of predators. And also it takes away the protection that we often give space to for children who are harmed. And so all of that needs to really be talked about in a silo, in a space where people can actually look at those intersections and say, yeah, you know what, we're doing this all wrong. But unfortunately, in those two intersection communities of Black activism and also white feminism, you also have a great deal of privilege. Now, you have masculine and patriarchal privilege on the Black liberation side, and you also have white privilege on the white feminism side. And both of those have an inherent disdain towards Black women and their intersection. So at this point, it's time for us to just take a deep breath and take a reset on all this and realize that neither one of those served Black women and girls, and to call that out and to be okay calling that out, which is why a Gloria Allred, who stands up as a feminist yet will not return the phone call of a Black attorney who's been doing this work, speaks to that white privilege that unfortunately has given her the opportunity to center these conversations. On the other side, you have prominent male activists like Umar Johnson and Tariq Nasheed and others that are really just taking this out of context and looking at it through the terms of exploiting, I will say, the over-incarceration of Black male bodies, and saying that because we have an over-incarceration of Black male bodies, and before we talk about Black male sexual predators, we got to first them, hashtag first them, talk about the white guys, although not understanding that a lot of these prominent white men are now, you know, being held accountable. But the bottom line is neither of those spaces are helpful to Black women and girls. Neither of those spaces. I remember a few years ago, there was a group that tried to co-opt Mute R. Kelly, and we literally had to go and threaten with a cease and desist And the entire discourse was, why does it matter? Why do you keep saying Black girls matter? What about other girls? And I'm like, you know what? Stop. Just can stop. So what I think that, and my hope for Mute R. Kelly, is that it was very difficult to co-opt this. It was very difficult because it was targeting Black and brown survivors. It was also offering a platform to have these deep conversations about intersectionality and misogyny war, and how the predominant activist movement ignored and exploited Black women and girls. I mean, come on, let's be real. You know, the founder of Kwanzaa, you know, is a convicted felon for battering and abusing Black women and girls. Susan B. Anthony organized with segregationist wives. So give it a break. You know, neither one of those movements really has done a very good job at talking about that intersectional oppression. And I think Mute R. Kelly and a lot of other Black feminist activists who've been out here are beginning to talk about it in the terms of that intersectional oppression that Black women and girls face. And it was within that Black intersectional oppression that R. Kelly was allowed to malign Black women and girls. And now we are learning boys for over 30 years.
Well, I mean, I have nothing more to add to that brilliance, Kenya. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Tell folks where they can find you if they want to get more of the hacks on all of the things. Because if you're sex positive, if you want to know more about like conversations on sexuality and just like being free and safe with yourself, you should also definitely follow Kenyette. Kenyette.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Conversations. Some be a little bit too risque for me sometimes, but I appreciate the knowledge that I get from my big sis all the time. Some people where they can find you.
Thank you so much. Well, definitely we're at, if you're interested in the campaign, Mute R. Kelly, official Mute R. Kelly on all social media platforms. You can find us there. My personal contact, I'm on Twitter at K_TishB. You can find me. You can kind of, experience what it is. I'm also on Twitter. I said Twitter. I'm also on Instagram at Kenyette_Tish, and on Facebook, Kenyette Tisha Barnes. So find me. Let's have a conversation. Definitely, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Absolutely. So I have been with y'all all morning. Yay. Thank you so much for hanging with me. And I am going to kick it over to the team because I believe there is a pre-recorded interview from Ben with John Nichols of The Nation, talking more about some of the stuff with the census and some other really dope information. John Nichols is a pretty prolific writer over at The Nation, so that should be a really good interview. So I've been sitting in on this Friday for Benjamin Dixon. I'm Anoa Changa. You can catch me online at The Way with Anoa, and I'm out. Peace.
TheNation.com and author of the book, The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party. John, thank you for joining us.
Stop the recording. Do it one more time. No
problem. Countdown. Let me know. And friend of the show, John, thank you so much for coming back and sharing this time with us.
I'm honored to be with you, my friend. And I do like being identified as a friend of this show. I think it's a great one.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I have followed your work for years because you cut to the core of the intersection of race, of class, white supremacy. thenation.com and author of the book, The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party. John, thank you for joining. Friend of the show, John, thank you so much for coming back and sharing this time with us.
I'm honored to be with you, my friend. And I do like being identified as a friend of this show. I think it's a great one.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I have followed your work for years because you cut to the core of the intersection of race, class, white supremacy, capitalism, the Democratic Party. But your most recent article dealing with Ron Johnson, and not only from the perspective of the bidding of the ultra rich, which is a part of the title, but tell us what you have found in the conjunction, in the intersection rather, of Ron Johnson, the Republican Party, and the moment that we find ourselves in American history.
Absolutely. Ron Johnson is probably the most vulnerable Republican U.S. senator in 2022.
Joining me now is author and journalist John Nichols. He is of thenation.com and author of the book, The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party, and friend of the show. John, thank you so much for coming back and sharing this time with us.
I'm honored to be with you, my friend. And I do like being identified as a friend of this show. I think it's a great one.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I have followed your work for years because you cut to the core of the intersection of race, class, white supremacy, capitalism, the Democratic Party. But your most recent article dealing with Ron Johnson, and not only from the perspective of the bidding of the ultra rich, which is a part of the title, but tell us what you have found in the conjunction, in the intersection rather, of Ron Johnson, the Republican Party, and the moment that we find ourselves in American history.
Absolutely. Ron Johnson is probably the most vulnerable Republican U.S. senator in 2022. He hasn't announced whether he'll run for re-election, but it's expected that he will. Donald Trump is actively encouraging him to run. And the thing to understand about Ron Johnson is that until Trump came along, he was a backbencher. He was somebody people didn't pay attention to. When Trump came on the scene, Johnson kind of flowered. He was excited. He was thrilled. He loves this world of conspiracy theories and kind of really ugly, crude politics. That's where Johnson's at. And so a lot of people think of him as just a, kind of an unblinking, unthinking Trumper. But there's a deeper, darker side to the guy, and that is he's a very rich man who got himself elected to the U.S. Senate by spending a lot of money, much of it his own money initially. And since he has been there, he has used his position to dramatically enrich his campaign donors. And a new study by ProPublica reveals that two major donors to the Johnson's campaign and to his political projects, to PACs that have supported him in key elections, gave in the last election cycle about $20 million to help Johnson get elected.
Wow.
I know, it's a huge amount.
Wow.
But here's a bigger number for you, my friend. Johnson then went to the mat in the 2017 tax cut fight, the Trump tax cut, to include a small provision that even Trump didn't want.
Joining me now is author and journalist John Nichols. He is of thenation.com and author of the book, The Fight for the Soul of the Democratic Party, and a friend of the show. John, thank you so much for coming back and sharing this time with us.
I'm honored to be with you, my friend. And I do like being identified as a friend of this show. I think it's a great one.
Oh, thank you so much for that. I have followed your work for years because you cut to the core of the intersection of race, of class, white supremacy, capitalism, the Democratic Party. But your most recent article dealing with Ron Johnson, and not only from the perspective of the bidding of the ultra rich, which is a part of the title, but tell us what you have found in the conjunction, in the intersection rather, of Ron Johnson, the Republican Party, and the moment that we find ourselves in American history.
Absolutely. Just a, kind of an unblinking, unthinking Trumper. But there's a deeper, darker side to the guy, and that is he's a very rich man who got himself elected to the U.S. Senate by spending a lot of money, much of it his own money initially. And since he has been there, he has used his position to dramatically enrich his campaign donors. And a new study by ProPublica reveals that two major donors to the Johnson's campaign and to his political projects, to PACs that have supported him in key elections, gave in the last election cycle about $20 million to help Johnson get elected.
Wow.
I know, it's a huge amount.
Wow.
But here's a bigger number for you, my friend. Johnson then went to the mat in the 2017 tax cut fight, the Trump tax cut, to include a small provision that even Trump didn't want to do, right? And because it was so closely divided, Johnson said, well, I'm not going to vote for this unless I get this. It became such a big deal that they included the provision he had asked for. It is now revealed through confidential documents that that provision could be worth, it already has been worth to these major donors to Johnson's campaign, over $200 million. And it could ultimately be worth, it is expected that it could be worth $500 million, $500 million.
Wow.
So a $20 million investment in Ron Johnson gets you $500 million.
And for the ruling elite, for the wealthy in this country, that's a good investment, right? And we've seen this model. This is nothing new, but I don't know that I've ever seen it to this extreme. And perhaps you could talk about that from the historical perspective, because he's overachieving in terms of the grift.
Yeah, the grift is the right word, my friend. And he is overachieving. Look, we need to understand, and this is when you were introducing, you're talking about these kind of critical junctures, these intersections that we have in our politics. There's a reason why this country operates the way it operates. For a very long time, really since the founding of the country, you have had wealthy people using the government of this country to benefit themselves. Not sometimes directly, i.e. members of Congress who are enriching themselves, but often enriching their class, their donors, their supporters, to make sure that they remain in a position of economic and social and political power.
Right.
So that's always been there. We shouldn't, be neglectful of that reality. But what we should understand is that in Ron Johnson and people like him, this operates on steroids. And we are now in a moment where the Democrats have narrow control of the Congress. And that we've seen some dialing back of some of the worst things that happen. But one of the things that really needs to be addressed, and Bernie Sanders and others have talked about this, is the 2017 tax cut. Because that legislation has within it not just lower taxes for billionaires. I mean, incredible giveaway of just an immense amount of money to the super rich. It also has these little footnotes, if you will, these little lines of language that you and I wouldn't even have paid much attention to that are making the super rich dramatically richer. They're not paying their taxes, and they're not paying their taxes because language was inserted, in this case at the behest of Ron Johnson, that allowed them to avoid not, when we think of somebody not paying taxes, you think, oh, well, maybe, 20,000, 30,000, 100,000, maybe $1 million, but $500 million.
Wow. This is, I remember the tax fight of 2017 well. I was neck deep in it along with everyone else, trying to stop it from happening. But it was a moment that the Republican Party seized upon their majorities with no regard for a supermajority, using every tool at their disposal to get their agenda accomplished. And you outlined the path for Ron Johnson getting his donors somewhere potentially to the tune of $500 million. Republicans know how to use power to get what they want. What's the problem with the Democratic Party?
Oh, it's writ large. I mean, the problem with the Democratic Party is that when Republicans are in power, they seek to lock their power in. Yeah. They seek to suppress votes. They seek to restructure election systems. They seek to weaken unions. They do all sorts of things. And they seek to dramatically enrich the people who support them at election time. So they wire it for themselves. Right. Then when Democrats come in, instead of trying to clean the mess up, and I don't want Democrats to wire things for themselves. I want Democrats to create a fair and equitable and just system of governance, and that's going to offend a lot of corporations and even some Democratic donors at times. But instead of trying to clean the mess up, Democrats come in and too often manage.
That's right.
They manage what's handed to them. They are a managerial political party. And when you've had corruption and then it's handed off to you and you manage that corruption, you essentially lock it in.
Yes. Yes. And in one of your other recent articles dealing with the census and the upcoming gerrymandering and redistricting, this presents the Republican Party, the GOP, with a new opportunity to secure their power. Talk about that other article of yours at The Nation.
Sure. And I'm so glad you're focusing on it, because I really think that as much as exposing the corruption and the kind of backdoor dealing of the past, we have to be very conscious of the moment we live in. We're right now at a critical juncture. The much delayed, and frankly, I would argue much warped, census process has now produced data that will be used to draw the district lines for congressional districts, state legislative districts, and right down to the city council and the county commission level. This is really the definitional data that we've got. Now, at the top line, it tells us some really exciting things. America is becoming a more diverse country. America is becoming a country where, frankly, if you drew fair maps, you'd have a lot of possibility for Congress that looked a lot more like America, right? I mean, the possibilities are more real than ever, and yet what we have is a clear plan by the Republicans. They're not secret about it at all. Right. A clear plan to use this data not to create maps, not to create lines for congressional districts and legislative districts that reflect this growing diversity, that really give us a representative Congress, but to gerrymander the process in radical ways that will actually increase Republican majorities in states that are diversifying. Now, I'm not one of those people who tells you that diversity necessarily leads to a Democratic majority. Mm-hmm. That's not always the case. I mean, I understand that we have to recognize all these dynamics. But what I can tell you is that the Republican plan is to use this data for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to warp the process sufficiently that even if most people vote for Democratic candidates in a particular state, that state will have overwhelming Republican representation.
And this is what we see all across the country, right? When you couple the redistricting with the reality of the Electoral College, this is how Republicans who represent a minority opinion in this country, this is how, like that 30% or that 33% that no matter what Donald Trump did, they always supported him. This is how we have the tyranny of the minority. Could you tell the audience not only about the tyranny of the majority, but how do we overcome that when we have a Democratic Party that doesn't seem to recognize the score?
Well, it's clear. I'll start with the Democratic Party. It's clear they do not recognize the score. They left for recess, for their summer recess, and would that we could all have been, take a month off, right?
Right.
Wonderful. So they're out. They've left Washington, and they didn't, in the Senate, do the single thing they need to do, which is overturn the filibuster, or at least find a workaround on democracy issues, and pass the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. These two pieces of legislation address gerrymandering. They literally get to the heart of the matter. Now, literally days before the data came down, at a point when the Congress could have done exactly what they need to do to make sure that we get fair lines, they didn't do it. And so now we're in this danger zone. So that I begin with that side of it, why that's concerning. Now, why is it a danger zone? Because very, very wealthy people, and remember we started our conversation with our Republican friends who make the rich much richer. Yeah. Very wealthy people have poured a fortune into weaponizing the redistricting process. And what they have done is develop computer programs, develop strategies, hired people, brought folks into the mix, brought lawyers in. They're ready to go. And in states across the country, they're going to do it. They're going to draw lines that create a circumstance.
Sunlight that always stays, dinner by the waterway. It's that sweet life.
Hey, Dwayne, lower the music and bring me on this stream. I'm here. Gotcha. Hey, everyone. We're apparently having technical difficulties. So I'm about to hit publish in the next little bit on that interview. So it will be up on the Benjamin Dixon Show channel. I don't know why we're having these issues, but it's Friday after the 13th. So maybe we're having ripple effects here. Who knows? Team should be back on Monday. So hopefully we'll be back on track next week. I'm going to do a raid on Twitch to Pascal's channel because we see that he is live, and YouTube. If you guys head over, I know Pascal would love the audience. So everyone have a great weekend, and we will see you Monday. Check that interview on the Benjamin Dixon Show.
I brought a girl on my Vespa. She said I already told ya, yeah. I never dated a black guy. I said you're brown yourself. Let me offer help. Come on inside, where everybody knows knows your name, everybody knows your name. Time to catch a flight, but you can make me go. Unlocking all the memories of my new home. Ventilated echoes playing to and fro, back and forth, yeah. Caught some kids dancing in the alleyway. Crazy how the melodies began to play, yeah. Tell me how you feel it when you hear the lyric, yeah. My heart's in Stockholm. Now I never wanna go home. I left my heart in Stockholm. Now I never wanna go home. Separate again. Sunlight that always stays in and by the waterway. It's that sweet life, sweet life, sweet life. I never wanna go home, go home. I'm living in Stockholm, Stockholm. I never wanna go home, go home. Living in Stockholm, Stockholm. I never wanna go home, go home. I'm living in Stockholm, Stockholm. Yeah. Shut up, I got the bed, the bed. We got Ga